Good morning. It's Thursday, May the 28th, and this is Village in Motion. My name is Jim Bell. I'm the pastor of the Village Church here at Greenspring and a member of the pastoral ministry staff. This morning, we're fortunate to have the pastoral ministries coordinator as our guest. Reverend Dr. Lisa Fiddermon came to Greenspring in January of this year. She has 2 degrees, a Master of Divinity and a Doctor in Ministry degrees from Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington. She and her husband of 23 years have 2 teenagers, a daughter 19 and a son 17. So Lisa, welcome to our program this morning, and I'm looking forward to our conversation together.
Okay, well, thank you for having me on.
Lisa, maybe we could start by you just sort of sharing your own spiritual journey with folks so we get to know you a little bit better.
Okay, sure. Thank you for all that education that I have, but kind of education there is a real person. I grew up in a place called Suffolk, Virginia, which is south of Norfolk, and I'm the youngest of 3. I've been, I spent some time in Westbury, New York, and for me, I was raised by my grandmother in Suffolk, Virginia, and she was my first introduction to faith. She was such a great example of what a person of faith look like. I mean, she's the only person to this day that I know of that prays for someone who is being transported to the hospital. She prays for the ambulance. She prays for safe travel for people. I have yet to meet someone who still does that. And so those are the kinds of things that she showed me growing up. She was the kind of person that would sing hymns or hum hymns in the church, from the church, as she was cleaning the house. So it was the behind the scenes thing. She was a person that was very devout in her faith. She went to church regularly and made sure that I went to church regularly. And of course, there was a point where I just started to wonder about all this church stuff, if it's really real. And I just began to ask the question, God, if you are real, would you show yourself to me? And I was 10 years old at the time, just very inquisitive, and God did show me that he was real in a way that I understood. And I believe that there are no incidents. There are no coincidences. There was an opportunity. I think all of us have moments where there's just a knowing. We know when it's time to go to school. We know when it's time to get married. We know when it's time to have children. And as a 10-year-old, I knew that God was real based on the kinds of experiences that I've had in church. And church for me growing up was a very positive experience. We had fun at church. That has been my spiritual journey. And so for me, prayer is so incredibly important. And I have seen how God answers my prayers through my life crises, through all of my life's crises.
And right now you are an ordained minister in the Free Methodist Church, is that right?
Yes.
Can you just say a little bit about the Free Methodist Church?
Okay, sure. Yeah, most people, they're familiar with United Methodist Church, and generally people say, oh, what is Free Methodist? Free Methodist is actually a branch of the United Methodist Church. There was a man named E.T. Roberts who just didn't believe in some of the things that the United Methodist Church was doing. The backstory is that he believed that slaves should be free. He believed that women should preach, And he believed in that people should be able to sit where they want to sit and worship. At that particular time, they had what was called pew rentals, similar to when you go to a sporting event and you have assigned seating. They actually had keys for the pews for you to sit in. And he didn't agree with all of those things, and so a new denomination was birthed out of that, which is Free Methodist. And so they originated out of the northern part of New York, upper state New York.
I was just also wondering, what was it that attracted you to the pastoral ministries position here in Greenspring?
Well, there's a funny story about that. I actually was not looking to pursue ministry per se. I was looking for a change, and I was looking in other areas, and my husband actually found the announcement for Greenspring, and I looked at the list of responsibilities, and I just began to check it off. And my husband, he's like, "Lisa, this is you all day long. You know, why?" And I did, and it felt like home for me. I do find it a privilege to be able to, a privilege and an honor to be able to serve older adults, because older adults have so much wisdom to share, and they teach so much about endurance. And as someone who is becoming an older adult, I'm looking for role models, people that I can model my life after. So I think it's a great to be able to be here at Greenspring, and I've met some really amazing people, and I'm looking forward to getting to know even more of the amazing people that are here at Greenspring.
I think that by you coming at the end of January, I've often thought about you coming that soon, and then this coronavirus just suddenly happening, that my analogy would be, if you're learning to swim, you generally take some lessons, and then you start swimming, and it's almost like you came and had to jump in the deep end and either swim or drown right away. So I admire the fact that you have come into this pandemic and led us so well.
Well, thank you. That's a good analogy. I think a lot of us feel like we've just been plopped in a water and have in a place where we just need to just start swimming and just do the best we can with what we have to work with. But I think I feel that I'm very blessed to be here, because the pastoral ministry staff, Jim, you, and everyone else, we have a really great team, and I'm just blessed to be part of the pastoral ministry staff here.
Have you had an opportunity in light of just the absolute busyness of this pandemic on our staff? Have you had an opportunity to think about your own vision for pastoral ministries and just beyond the pandemic, like just what kind of vision you have about pastoral ministries?
Well, I think that we will continue in providing care for the spiritual needs of our residents, and not just for the residents, but for the families, for the staff as well, and continuing to be respectful of the spiritual preferences that exist here. I think that we can endeavor to continue to excel in providing effective spiritual care to those that are here at Greenspring. One of the things that I really would like to do is to increase our visibility and to raise more awareness about what it is that we do and what we can offer as a pastoral ministries team.
It is difficult, I think, sometimes for pastoral ministries to have high visibility, because what we're doing on a day-to-day basis often is very confidential, very personal, helping people with their faith journeys and the kind of anxieties they have. How do you see us as a staff? What role do you think we could play in helping develop the reopening of the community in terms of the faith communities?
Well, a lot of talk has been had about reopening. Of course, with reopening businesses outside of Greenspring, and of course, I'm sure a lot of our residents have been having that same conversation. And we are at a point where there's no set date for the reopening of the chapel. We're going to continue as we have been, continuing with washing our hands and wearing the masks and I call it safe distancing. We're continuing with all of that, and I think that's going to be with us for a while. I am in conversation with, or I will be in conversation with some of the other faith communities to really talk about what some of the safety measures would look like once we do have a date for reopening, but I don't see that as a date that will happen anytime soon. But when it does, we will be ready, and we will have some safety measures that we will continue to go through. Right now, there are 4 phases that I'm looking at that we're planning for, and we're not at phase 1 yet. We don't have plans we're not really ready to share any plans just yet. We're still in the discussion stage.
It is strange in terms of pastoral ministries when we have staff meetings now because, of course, with the social distancing, we're literally having our staff meetings on the telephone, although we're all sitting in offices just a few feet from each other, and we can hear each other on the telephone and also hear you from your offices. But we seem to be weathering that, I think. How are you feeling about the way the staff is relating and operating and stuff like that in this pandemic?
Well, I think that we've been doing well under the circumstances. Like you said, we're using use of the technology that we have. Of course, we miss face-to-face, but we've been very diligent about meeting regularly over the phone to just kind of touch bases with each other and to support one another. Because the work that we do is very heavy, but at the same time is very fulfilling. And we need to be able to be supportive of one another and to help share ideas and to provide whatever it is that is needed for one another through this time.
I also, if this is not too personal, I also just wondered, how are you taking care of yourself in terms of your spiritual life during this pandemic and the intensity of the situation here?
Well, again, prayer is very calming for me. I know that everyone has their happy place. My happy place is prayer, and I have what's called an anchor scripture that helps me to stay grounded, to keep the perspective, which is, and for me, it's Jeremiah. For those in the faith community, you may be familiar with this, Jeremiah 29. Chapter 29, verse 11, which says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to not harm you, but to give you hope and a future. And so that is a comfort for me to believe and know that there is a bigger plan that is outside of what I can see, that there is something that is happening beyond what I know about, a force at work that is outside of what we can control that is working for my good. So that's a great comfort for me. For Mother's Day, my daughter gave me this aromatherapy infusion, and it changes colors, and it has these nice fragrances. that's one of my favorite things, and that's very calming for me also. Aromatherapy. So I really enjoy those things. So those are some of the kinds of self-care things that I do to help during the pandemic. And just remembering that there are only so many things that I have control over. I'm focusing on the things that I have control over. And I'm just, I do the best I can to hope for the best and pray for the best.
I was just wondering, I've driven the questions here, but you and I talked some time ago about your stories, because you're a good storyteller.
Yes.
What is it that would you like for us to know about you that's not covered by these questions that I've been asking you?
Okay, yeah, sure. And I'll just share the story of how I met my husband. My husband, we will have been married 23 years this June. I was in my late 30s. I was in my early 30s at the time, and it was at that time in my life I was at a point where the clock was ticking. There's a clock that we feel that it's like, okay, there's this anxiousness. It's like, okay, it's time to get married. I need to start settling down, and I was really concerned about whether or not I was going to find the right person. I was dating different people, and it just wasn't working out. I share this story with my single friends, there was an older adult who was like a mentor for all of us who were single and looking for that right person. And she says, Lisa, listen, this is what you do. What you should do is you should pray that God that your husband will recognize you when he sees you. And I said, okay. So I started praying that. And the thing is, my husband had been in my circle the whole time. It's just that I didn't realize it. And after I started praying that prayer, there was an event at a banquet. And my husband tells this story. He says, he saw me from across the room. And he said that there was something really different about how I looked. And the thing was that there was this woman that was sitting there with this big hat on, and the woman with the hat thought that he was looking at her, and so she was, giving these flirtatious eyes and everything, and he's moving, trying to see around the hat. And he said that there was something really special about the way that I looked that particular night. And to this day, after 23 years, he still remembers that dress that I wore at that banquet. And so after that, he got the courage up to ask me out, and we've been together ever since. So he's been an answered prayer for me, and I think I was an answered prayer for him. So here we are, 23 years later.
And I take it that he is very supportive of you in this new role.
Yes, very supportive. I'm very thankful that he has allowed people to allow me to be able to share my gifts and abilities with others, and it is a balancing act to try to balance ministry and marriage and children together. But God is giving me the grace that I need to be able to do all of that. And none of it is perfect, but it's working.
There is one thing that I noticed when you send us a memo. You have a line on there. I'm not sure where it's. I know the poem, but I think it ends with "I hope you'll dance." how did that come about?
Well, actually, it's actually a song, and it's an inspirational song. It really talks about how even though there are going to be rainy days that we have, but even during the rainy days, we hope that you give faith a fighting chance. In those times of crisis, those times of uncertainty, that during those rainy days, during those times of uncertainty, that not only would you give faith a fighting chance, but you would learn to dance, learn to be joyful, even as the rain is coming down. As today is a rainy day. We all have to find our own sunshine some kind of way. I'm wearing this really colorful jacket that's my sunshine for today, to try to my way of dancing in the rain, through the rain.
I just what made me call my attention to that was I actually had used that song in a memorial service not too long ago, and I remembered that line about if it comes to either sitting something out, then it was I hope you'll dance, I hope you'll dance, I hope you'll dance, and I was actually happy to see that on your when you send out memos.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being the guest here today, and I hope that what this has done for all of you who are watching is made those on the staff of Pastoral Ministries, and particularly our new coordinator, better known, and that in this community, I hope you will feel free to call Pastoral Ministries, to ask for Lisa, to ask for any of us on the staff, because we are there to serve faith needs during this particular pandemic. And Lisa, I really appreciate you doing this, and I really appreciate what you are bringing to our staff, and want to thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you. And we can all be a blessing to each other. There's a reason for why we're here together, and I think there's a great plan at work that will see us through it all.
And I hope all of you watching will stay safe, and I hope you will feel very secure in God's arms of love through this pandemic. Good day.